You're listening to the Served Up Show, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful content. Your hostesses, Bridget Albert, is best known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with over 25 years of experience. And I'm Julie Milroy, best known for my passion for leading change and helping others grow in their careers. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry.
Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. We are honored to be powered by the women winemakers of Banshee and Ferrari-Carano at the Food Network's New York City Wine and Food Festival. This is a star-studded 4-day event showcasing the talents of world-renowned chefs, wine and spirit experts, and so much more. The Served Up team will be in the middle of the action. Stay tuned for a look behind the scenes and in the moment Instagram Live at the Food Network New York City Wine and Food Festival.
I had the honor and pleasure of chatting with my friend, Gregory Smith. Aaron started in restaurants to get through school, and he became inspired by the sense of community that can grow in a well-managed hospitality company. His commitment to opening his own restaurant at 24 got him the keys at 28. He's operated as the managing director for 5 years before accepting his current role as the first executive director of the United States Bartenders Guild. So sit back, relax, grab yourself your favorite cocktail, and listen to Aaron as he shares his journey in the beverage world.
Aaron, I am so excited to welcome you to Served Up the podcast, brother. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to chat with you today.
Absolutely. Can you tell our listeners how you got your start in the beverage community?
Sure. I guess my first hospitality job was like a 24-hour coffee shop, and I worked the graveyard shift. And that was really fun because we got to deal with rushes. You know, we had the dinner rush, and then we had the bar rush after the bars closed. And this was in San Antonio, Texas. So the bars closed there at 2:00. And so we always had a nice little rush from 2 to 3 in the morning. And then after working that job, I went to, I actually started working at Starbucks. And that's where I probably learned, this was back in 1999. So Starbucks had real espresso machines at the time and actually was in quite an expansion mode because they did exceptional training. And that was probably where I had my first interaction with tasting. So they do a lot of training in tasting different coffee varietals and then comparing the tasting notes from African coffees to Indonesian coffees and Latin American coffees. And that's where I started to develop a palate, was actually through coffee. Worked for Starbucks for a while, and then still in San Antonio, I also did some casual fine dining service in a restaurant there. And then my best friend and I jumped on a Greyhound bus and moved to Seattle. And she transferred with a job at the Gap, and I figured I could wait tables anywhere. So we moved to the Starbucks motherland in Seattle, Washington, and actually both got jobs at youth hostel. So we had moved there to work at to volunteer for a nonprofit and do an AmeriCorps program. And then while we were doing that, we stayed at the Green Tortoise Hostel. And ended up getting jobs there as well. So that's sort of the short end of kind of the broad base of my hospitality experience before I got into more specifically into restaurants and restaurant management. So very diverse, coffee shop to real coffee to casual fine dining to a youth hostel, and all of those things really contributed to very different styles of service, but I got to see the similarities in all of them, and the differences, and then kind of chart my own path. Starbucks teaches you a lot about efficiency and about movement and about sharing space with another person, very directly related to bartending. And then casual fine dining, our management staff have been working at the only 4-star restaurant in San Antonio. So they had great attention to detail and did fantastic training on that. The coffee shop taught me volume, as well as like how to be in a neighborhood. And then at the youth hostel, I ended up being a tour guide a lot of times for people who are traveling internationally. So knowing the local community, being able to connect people to experiences locally, I brought all of that into bartending, all of those varied experiences.
I love that. Something about Starbucks, I think that is so interesting is that you can go anywhere in the world and get your order and it tastes just like you get it at home. You can't say that for a lot of bar chains, a lot of restaurant chains, for a lot of bars. Even if I go on a Monday and then I come back on a Wednesday, right, and order the same cocktail, a lot of times it's not consistent. So I think it's wonderful because their training program must be outstanding as far as being consistent for the customer.
It is. And they've adopted more technology over time. And so some of it is more automated now. But you still have to really understand. I haven't been through the program in more than 20 years, so I'm not sure how it is now, but the product is so consistent. It kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just amazing. Okay, so take us from where you got this amazing foundation, and it really is. It's so unique. Really all those things that you need, all those touch points that you need in hospitality to really bring you in to the world of bar and restaurants. Whereas we know it's something you're either going to love it or you're just not, because it is so incredibly aggressive and not always so friendly either. So can you give us, that part of your story? Where did you start? How did you start and why? Yeah.
Well, I took that first job at the coffee shop because I had moved into my own apartment and I didn't have a whole lot of money, and at least I would get a meal at the end of the training shift as opposed to waiting 2 to 3 weeks for my first paycheck. So that was really where it started. And then I just fell in love with the culture of the staff, like the team atmosphere, the sort of family environment. There were women who worked in that restaurant for 30 years. I was trained by people who had worked in the same place for 30 years that knew the names of every regular customer, that knew exactly, to the second how long and how well side work needed to be done. I was trained by people who were lifers. And so when I realized that so many people had sort of built their lives onto this work, onto this job, and had been able to live it successfully to their, I realized like there was potential there. So I go back sometimes to San Antonio. I still see some of the same servers that I worked with in that restaurant still to this day. And that was, 24 years ago. And some of them are still there, working breakfast every day. So that was probably what, was like food, one of those core basic needs brought me in. And then I really got attracted to the teamwork, to the family environment, and to the lifelong commitment that people make to it. So, I mentioned that I moved to Seattle, and I worked in a couple of places there. Seattle, you have to be 21 to wait tables and bartend if you are in a restaurant that serves alcohol. In Texas, you actually can serve alcohol at a table at 16, and or at the time, the laws could have changed now. I live in California now, so I'm not up to speed on it. You can wait tables and serve alcohol at 16. You can bartend at 18. And so it was a very different world in Seattle. You had to have a beverage alcohol and food servers permit. So I got to know a little bit about those regulations. And I worked at one sort of locally owned and managed restaurant that was sort of a philanthropist project. It was a vegetarian restaurant in Seattle. And then because I always like to have two jobs, I like to be able to balance between two places and be able to work as much as I wanted. And I also worked at a more of a national chain that also had exceptional training. And it was there that I did my first bartender training. And so I was probably 21. And then I also picked up shifts at a private club in Seattle as well. And did some event bartending there. pretty shortly thereafter, I was promoted to management. So I was a manager at 22 and started managing restaurants this was in the chain restaurant. And it's a franchise, sort of a locally owned franchise. So the owner was present and around and had a very strong accounting background. My management training came in an operation that was very focused on accounting and running good numbers and managing costs very, very carefully. Because it was my first management job, I did not realize that was rare. I didn't realize that experience that knowledge wasn't widely distributed across other restaurants and bars. So I was very fortunate that I got to carry that with me into my management career later.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, we're just really kind of scratching the surface here. So what happens next for Aaron Gregory Smith?
So living in Seattle, I decided one of my colleagues, one of my coworkers who was a manager as well, had decided to buy a franchise in the same company and was like, hey, if that guy can own a restaurant, why can't I? And so I started thinking about, at the age of 24, after a few years of managing, started thinking about what skills gaps I had, what experience I needed to be able to open my own restaurant and manage it myself. And so one of the areas that I didn't really know about or feel confident in was actually in cooking. And so I applied for and enrolled in culinary school in San Francisco and moved to San Francisco to attend culinary school. While I was waiting for culinary school to start, I got a job with a chef operator here in San Francisco named Loretta Keller. She had worked with Jeremiah Tower at Stars, had been the chef de cuisine there. She had done much of her stage with Susan Spicer in New Orleans, and had a restaurant that was very successful, about 12 years old. And I had gotten the job because a friend of mine was a wine distributor, and she introduced me to the GM. So I was hired at this restaurant and to run food, wait tables, kind of entry level. And that's where I really started to learn about how a chef-run restaurant is different from a place that is, more of a chain restaurant or a franchise or something.
It is completely different. Menu. Yeah, you're talking
very,
apples
very
to
different.
Oranges. Yes.
And I loved it. I loved it even more because of how much passion was in the food and in the commitment to service. And it was just an amazing restaurant, foundational here in the Bay Area. So I mentioned to Loretta that I was going to be going to culinary school, and she said, "Don't waste your money." She said, for two reasons. One, she said, if you really want to learn to cook, I'll teach you for free. And second, I really think that your skills belong in the front of house. So that, I just said, okay, I'll take your advice. You've been doing this for a long time, and I have a lot of respect for you. So maybe I won't go to culinary school here. And she knew a lot more about what culinary school meant. And so and she knew that, my goals ultimately were ownership. And I don't think that was necessary, that was not a necessary step. Worked with Loretta at Bizou for a while, and then she decided to close Bizou and actually launch a new concept in the same restaurant. And I had always wanted to do a restaurant opening. That was something that I hadn't learned yet, and I knew I needed to run my own restaurant. And so at the staff meeting where she told us all that she was closing Bizou and opening a new restaurant, she asked all of us if anybody who wanted to apply for the new place to let her know. And so I set a meeting with her and told her that I'd be happy. I would love to work in the new restaurant. And if she wanted me to start as a manager, as a manager, I'd be happy to have the experience. And she said, okay. Since the restaurant was going to be much more bar forward and I had bartending and management experience, she asked me to stage with a friend of hers restaurant that had a very popular bar. And during the closure period. So I went through bartender training actually at the Slanted Door in San Francisco. And for those who haven't haven't heard about the Slanted Door, it's a pretty phenomenal program. At the time, it was being managed by Thad Vogler, and he had me stage with his lead bartender, who was Eric Adkins, and Eric was running the bar most recently, while the when the restaurant was open. It's currently closed right now, temporarily closed for the pandemic. So I trained with Eric Adkins over the closure period, and then when we reopened, I was a floor manager and also kind of helped behind the bar. So I would say that taught me a lot about the chef-run restaurant. It taught me a lot about doing an opening in a very competitive market of San Francisco. And I learned at the time, most of the cocktail bars in San Francisco were, and this was 2004, 2005, all of the cocktail bars were attached to restaurants. So this is really where the cocktail movement was happening in San Francisco, was at the Slanted Door, at Absinthe, where I also worked during the closure period. NOPA opened around this time. This was pre-Bourbon and Branch, pre-Rye Bar, before any of those standalone bars with cocktail programs opened. So that's where I really started to get to know the cocktail community and started meeting people from other restaurants. One of the first bartenders that was hired for the opening, we had Ian Scalzo, who is now an owner and operator of a bar here in San Francisco called Horsefeather, and then also Scott Baird, who was part of the Bon Vivants, is an owner of Trick Dog, and a phenomenal bartender. So Scott and I became pretty close as we worked together, and actually became roommates after a time. And I kind of decided that I was ready to take a break from managing. I wanted to open my own place someday, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do that with as much time and commitment managing took. So I wanted to take a little break, enjoy my mid-20s a little bit, and then start putting things in motion to open my own restaurant. So I resigned from Coco 500 and took a job at Rye Bar, which had just opened. And this was one of the first standalone cocktail bars. The owners had owned bars, John Gasparini and Greg Lindgren. They owned two other bars in San Francisco at the time, and Rye was their third, and their first that was really cocktail focused. And John and Greg were both founding members of the San Francisco chapter of the United States Bartenders Guild. They used to host a monthly cocktail competition at Rye on Mondays. And I didn't work Mondays, but normally it was a one bartender night. And so they needed a second bartender. So I would come and work on Monday nights and be the extra bartender when they had these USBG cocktail competitions every Monday. And I thought it was the weirdest thing in the world, to be honest. I was like, who are these dudes and ladies that come in once a month and create these cocktails and compete with each other for, sort of the honor of listing a cocktail on a menu? And who are all these USBG people? So in working at Rye, I was pretty much trying to enjoy my life, have a personal life. And I stayed sort of arm's length from the USBG for a while, although I started to get to know people and recognize them, and started to see a whole lot of value in that community that was built there. And so working at Rye, I did that for a few years, maybe picked up shifts in a few other places here and there over time. And then Scott and I got back in touch and decided to see about putting together a business plan for our own bar and restaurant. And so we started looking for investors. This is Scott Baird, who I worked with at Coco 500. And we started looking for investors, started looking for locations. And then we were pretty close to finding like a primary funding source. And we went to a meeting and we're at a location and the meeting just didn't go well. The person that was going to be investing just had no hospitality experience, but had a lot of ideas about how a great restaurant could be. I felt like Scott and I really understood each other's values when it came to what a good restaurant and bar was going to be, and sort of being dependent on this third person that had funding was just didn't feel like it was a good fit. Mm-hmm. So I went to work after that meeting, and I sat down with my boss at the time, John Gasparini, and was just sort of venting about the meeting and how it didn't go well. And he said, we are actually, Greg and I are actually looking for partners to come in and got to be the operating managers of Romolo, which was their first bar, 15 Romolo. It opened in 1998. And so I had only been there once, I think, in all of the time that I worked at Rye, because it was in a neighborhood that I didn't often go to in North Beach. And so I mentioned it to Scott, and when I got off work one night, we just went up to check out the bar and sat there and scoped it out. And then wheels kind of got in motion. We pulled funding together to buy into the bar as minority partners and operating partners. And then we started operating a few months later, and then we closed and remodeled and relaunched the bar in 2009. So
and we're only up to 2009, folks. I'm getting tired just listening to you. Your career is amazing. And can I just say that I think like during that time as well, and please, if I'm wrong, but I want to say that like San Francisco had more crafted cocktail bars per capita than probably any major city in the US.
Probably. Yes. I mean, New York may have had more in number, but definitely not per capita.
No, not per capita.
Because San Francisco's a relatively small community. We punch above our weight. That's for sure. It did. It had we had a great cocktail community building here, and so reopening Romolo was really exciting. We just, friends helped us with the remodel. We relaunched in the middle of the, one of the other things that is kind of crazy about the time, it was the midst of the Great Recession. So there were like, the headlines were all doom and gloom and everything's going to be horrible. And, 15 Romolo, funnily enough, is the restaurant of what used to be a boarding house, a Basque boarding house. It's in the Basque Hotel. And so it has a 16-room single resident occupancy hotel upstairs from it. And at the time, we were operating both the hotel and the bar. And so with the headlines being so terrible, we thought, if worse comes to worse, we could just move into the hotel. We'll just live at work.
Gosh, my goodness.
I did live there for a little while during the remodel because somebody had to be there, 6 a.m. and at midnight.
Right.
But we did a lot of the remodel while, we did like the full kitchen remodel while we were still operating the bar. So we would just we'd just like board up the bar so that it wouldn't get too dusty. We'd spend all day, doing work in the kitchen, and then we'd reopen. So we did that for about 3 months, did as much as we could do with the bar still operating, and then closed for 6 weeks and then reopened. Yeah, it was a crazy time.
I was lucky enough that I went to the bar, during those times.
Yes.
Gosh, I've known you for a long time, man.
We've known for a very long time. Yes. I think, gosh. So Romolo, I was the operating partner at Romolo from 2008 to 2016. And I was doing that for many, so I was the primary operating partner. I was even the general manager for the first couple of years of it. And I think it was in 2009, shortly after we had reopened, that I think I had finally joined the USBG officially. I think I'd been going to events for a little while, and I think I finally paid dues. Or perhaps John and Greg paid my dues. I don't quite remember. At those times, there was no website, so there was nowhere to go and confirm your membership. And I saw David Nepop had sent an email. He was the chapter treasurer at the time. And he sent an email inviting people to volunteer for a national competition. And since I had worked all of those cocktail competitions at Rye, I thought, I'll go help out. They could use some extra hands. And I've seen enough of these things that I know kind of how they run. But what I didn't know is that national cocktail competitions with the USBG are a very different beast than a monthly local competition. And
totally different.
Yeah, this was the IBA qualifier. So this was IBA method competition that International Bartenders Association method. Tony Abaganem was going to be one of the judges. So I met Tony. It was hosted at the Starlight Room where Tony had worked previously. Our MC was Bobby G. And the competitors, funny group of competitors that year, Ricky Gomez, who was representing the New Orleans chapter and is now in Portland. And I work with very regularly still this many years later. Armando Rosario was representing Las Vegas. We had Mark Stoddard representing Denver. And I'm trying to remember, those are the three people that I still am in contact with to this day, besides Bobby and Tony, who I work with all the time as well. And it was just phenomenal to watch this group of people. I think Julio Cabrera was competing as well from Miami. Yes. So it's just like a superstar cast of bartenders at this really amazing place. And that's where I really started to get to know that there was a national organization, that there was something beyond my local chapter meetings. I think Livio Loro was there as well, who was the president of the USBG at the time. And after that event, David, I often tell people I picked up a tray one time at a USBG national cocktail competition, and I never went home. And that is really kind of where my USBG national volunteer experience started, because David asked if I wanted to volunteer for the local chapter after that. Mm-hmm. And I did. I did volunteer. I became the vice president of the local chapter. Shortly thereafter, I became the vice president of the National Association, and where I worked with you as national secretary when David became national president. And so that was 2010. And so I was still operating Romolo, volunteering for the National Association. And then our treasurer needed to resign, and so I became the treasurer for a little while. Bridget brought in a proposal to start a charity committee of the USBG, mm-hmm. which we launched into the USBG Foundation shortly thereafter. And so we started putting together the application to start a 501c3, which was, mm-hmm. Founding a 501c3 was really exciting. And we started working with Chris Bloom, who is remains to this day the counsel for the USBG, and that's somebody that you, Bridget, introduced us to, that you had known. And Chris has been a phenomenal mentor and helped us structure so many things. And we really, to get that 501c3 recognition from the IRS, you really have to get all your ducks in a row.
Right.
And when we did that, it really helped us realize how to do that for the guild too. So really the foundation led the guild to the place where it could dial things in and get really connected. And so it was 2012, 2013 that really started coming together.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like when you look back at the USBG, like just the journey of the organization, and, to hear from you, how you were introduced, how it led you into all the roles that are available at the USBG. And we'll talk about your current role in just a minute.
Yes.
But just to be part of that journey, Erin, and see from your own local chapter to what it is today. And it is still a very young organization compared to some others. It's not as old as maybe some others, but it has grown exponentially. I think because of yourself, because of people like Dave Napo, Kyle McHugh, there's so many to be thankful to that have really taken it to, like the Kim Hassaruds, right? Have taken it to this whole new level. And so can we fast forward and talk about what are you doing today with the USBG?
Well, right now I'm the executive director and so chief staff officer is in sort of association speak. And what we are doing today is, in a lot of respects, still we're sort of in that transition between startup and operation. We're kind of experiencing this maturing of the organization. We could take this a couple of different directions. We could talk a little bit about how, what some of what the most current initiatives are, what some of our most recent accomplishments are. We could go in a number of directions. What do you think would be the most interesting?
I think most interesting would be, what are your biggest accomplishments to date? Some of the really positive, amazing things, because I think a lot of the listeners may not even know what the USBG is. So maybe we start out there. What is it? And what are some of the cool stuff that it's done to date? And then how do you become a member?
I guess the thing that I am probably most proud of the USBG for doing is creating an environment where people who are starting their careers in management, leadership, whether it's in a hospitality operation, or perhaps maybe they're just starting in a role in a trades relations role for a supplier, as a local brand ambassador or trade marketing outreach. The USBG chapters create an incredible opportunity for people to develop their leadership skills. So every single chapter in the USBG has a local board of directors and a local council of officers. And those roles are oftentimes the first leadership role outside of maybe a junior management position that people are experiencing. And it's really incredible to watch people's careers grow and just accelerate after they've had this opportunity of local volunteer service. And Bridget, I'm sure you've seen a lot of this too. It is a challenge, like no two ways about it. Chapter leadership is an extraordinary challenge. The pressures that you're under from members, from sponsors, from the community at large to both represent and deliver results is incredible. Like it is an incredible responsibility. At the same time, it can be a massive accelerator to your career if you dig in, you make the time, you make the space, and you make the commitment to fulfill that role to the best of your ability. And I talk about chapter leadership because I'm probably the most jazzed ever right after our National Leadership Conference, which we just hosted at the end of last month. So just a couple of weeks ago. And that leadership conference, I don't know if you remember, but the leadership conference started back when you and I were volunteers on the national board. It was like sort of I told David when I ran for national vice president that I had like 2 non-negotiables, that I wanted to get everybody from all the chapters in the same room to talk about where we wanted to go with this organization. And then the second thing I wanted to do was work with more craft brands, because at the time it felt like everything was very big brand. And so very shortly after we started volunteering on the national board, we actually did host a national leadership conference in San Francisco in 2011. And that tradition has carried on. We've done it at least every other year since 2011. So we just finished our 6th or 7th one. And we,
it's amazing. It really is amazing.
It's been exciting. And it was, again, the same energy. It was volunteers from all over the country, where they are the people carrying the torch and holding the flag for the USBG in their local community. They come and join in with other people who are doing the same thing in their town. And just the magic of the energy that is formed in that space, and where people are going through the same things that you're going through in this very challenging volunteer role. And you get to swap stories, you get to trade best practices, get to learn a little bit more about how your chapter fits into the entire picture of what the national organization is trying to do. That's what we just came out of. And it was so fun. We had to put these on pause during the pandemic. And so we had hosted our previous one in 2019, and we just got back in person a couple of weeks ago. So I would say that experience is always a jolt of great positive energy for me. And I think everybody else who attends, just to see what an impact these volunteers are having in each other's lives.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. There's not many places where our community comes together where you really get that one-on-one time. I mean, you can talk like a Tales of the Cocktail, something like that. But this is something that where you're almost in this bubble for the leadership conference, where you're all together. You're breaking bread together. It's something very special to be part of.
Oh, yes. And Bridget was our keynote speaker at our 2019 conference.
I was.
Pre-pandemic. And that is also something I think that's really magical. That gets to something is the people who have volunteered for the USBG and then moved on in their careers to do other things, coming back and giving back. So like you coming back and being our keynote speaker for 2019 at this last one, one of the people I consider one of my mentees, Jessica Taylor, was a chapter treasurer when I first met her at a regional conference many, many years ago. And over the years, she just, progressed through the volunteer ranks of the USBG, progressed into incredible roles, becoming a professional educator of bartenders for Southern Wine and Spirits. And eventually she was on the National Board of Directors, chaired our National Education Committee. And Jessica has become such a brilliant presenter. Over these years, she has been phenomenal. And so she got post position as our first presenter at this last conference. And she prepared a presentation about finding your personal values and why how those personal values are reinforced or challenged by your volunteer role in the USBG. And it was really meaningful to watch her take this experience and then teach it back, and hold that space for new leaders who were in the same seat that she was in many years ago.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. You really get a front seat, whether you're at a leadership conference, whether you are in your monthly meetings, whatever role it is, even as an active member, let's say, to not only to nourish your career and to learn from others, but you really get to watch others flourish. Like you said something that was really important just a few minutes ago, if as a member, you are taking advantage, right, of everything that is around you. I know I credit my success, especially early on in my career, to the USBG. I say it all the time in interviews or, whatever, when I'm doing trainings. Like, if you're not part of it, it's absolutely ridiculous, to not be part of it.
Yeah.
If you're in this industry and you're very serious about what you're doing, because it is a platform that can really project you into what you'd like to do if you actively, take advantage of all the resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's something, if approaching hospitality as a career is something that you want to do, this can be a great resource. I think as we talk about sort of what's next for the USBG, making sure that the USBG is a good value and creates a good space for people who are approaching hospitality as a job too, that maybe aren't approaching it as a career. That is probably our next step, the next step in our development, and making sure that we are making space for people that have maybe more tangible needs about and getting their work done and having a good quality of life beyond career development, especially as we look into diversity and inclusion in our organization and what that means for our organization. We have to recognize that not everybody has the time, space, or intention to make hospitality a career. The amazing thing about this industry is that it really is made up of all kinds. It is made up of people who have passions in their personal life that don't pay the bills, and this creates an earning opportunity where you can earn relatively high per hour wages in the front of house, and have a side passion that actually keeps you going. And those people, the people who are in hospitality for those reasons, they 100% belong here too. And we want to support them, and we want to make sure that they have the tools and resources that they need to succeed in this as a job, not just as a career, not just as a stepping stone to something else in hospitality.
So how do people become a member? Like, if our listeners, especially those who are, in the beverage hospitality trade, are like, I would really like to become a member. Now I really know about this and what it's all about and what it does for people, right? What are my next steps?
Well, the timing is really compelling. And I know that some people will be listening to this asynchronously later in time. And that's okay too. We'll cover your needs as well in this answer. But right now, you can decide, do you want to join, if you are an individual and you want to join the organization, you're an individual bartender, you're an individual bar back host, server that wants to become a bartender or is interested in it. If you're a bar manager and you're looking for a community of support that you maybe aren't getting at work or to supplement what you're already receiving at work, you can go on to usbg.org and go to join. It's under the membership side of things. And right now, actually for the month of October, there is a discount for renewing members. But if you're joining, you can join and your dues are paid for all of next year. So if you join now, you're paid through the end of 2023, and it's $125 a year. And then you can either select a chapter, the chapter that is closest to you, and become a member of that chapter as well, or you can choose to be a member at large and join the join the national organization. So that's as an individual. Now, let's say that you own a small consulting company, or that you have a small bitters company or bar tools brand, or maybe you're even a distributor or a supplier at the small or large level. We also, for that matter, if you're a bar or restaurant operator, we do also provide group memberships. And this is something new for the USBG this year. But if you are a business owner and you'd like to purchase a membership for your business, and you may. And so we have two levels, we have two types. We have Guild House group memberships, which are for catering companies, for bars, for restaurants, for hotels, for people who are in direct customer service that sell to consumers. And then we have our vendor group memberships as well. And so you can buy those memberships in a package, and they come in batches of 5, 10, and upwards. And there's a little discount there if you do it that way. And this can be a great way to reward your staff, to connect them to the community, to form more relationships in your town, in your chapter, as well as introduce them to leadership opportunities outside of your business. As a former operator myself, I can tell you that I spent a lot of time organizing activities and events for my local chapter because my staff could go too. And it was sort of like this compounding effect. If I was going to do this really interesting activity anyway for my team, why not open the doors to everybody else and organize it through the chapter? And I found that it did create a ton of relationships. I mean, the bartenders that worked for me at that time have moved on to doing really incredible things, either in ownership of their own establishments now, or in where they're now working as brand ambassadors for different suppliers, working as distributors, because of the networks they were able to build through that sort of collaboration between us as volunteers and operators, as well as volunteers in the chapter. It created a ton of relationships and a lot of warmth, So I found it to be very much worth my time as a young operator, and I would have loved to have had this group membership, for my team at the time.
Yeah, 100%. I wish we would have had that back in the day, because I can tell you in Chicago, when we started the chapter and people were coming through, there were so many bars and restaurants that would look for, it'd be like a bat signal pretty much on your resume.
Yeah.
That you were a member, So
yeah.
I think that is something incredibly special. It shows that you are very serious, about your career and what you want your career to be. Can you give us
Absolutely.
some final thoughts, especially for those who are just entering the hospitality industry? You've had just, such a long career. And like I said, you've worn every single hat, I have. You have.
Yeah.
And so can you give those just starting out some advice?
Yes. I will say that focused attention to what you're doing is really what matters. It doesn't matter what job you're doing, and it doesn't matter what restaurant you're working in right now. Paying attention to the details of what you're doing is where you're going to learn. The great thing about this industry is that it is easy to get into. It doesn't require that you do a ton of outside investment in time, effort, or scholarship to learn. People are very willing to teach you on-the-job skills and on-the-job training, especially when you ask for it and you show that you want to learn. Like there are incredible mentors all around you. The other thing I'll say is, I think back to some of the women that I worked with that trained me to wait tables when I was 18 years old. And if I walked into that coffee shop now, not having had that experience, I might look at those women and think, maybe they don't have much to teach me, because, I'm the executive director of the Bartenders Guild. I've been a craft bartender at award-winning bars all over the country. But really, those women were very wise. And they taught me a lot about attention to detail, about how to be part of a staff, how to be part of a team. And I want to encourage younger, newer people in the hospitality industry to realize that every single person who's working in this industry has something to teach you. You don't know what it is right now, and you might not know for a very long time, but treat other people like they're wise. I guarantee you there is a busser or a dishwasher that knows how to stack plates exceptionally well and is really fast at consolidating movements. Watch how they work. Learn from them. Try to implement some of those things to your skills. There is a host that is exceptional at matching people to matching customers to the right server that's going to give them a great experience. Pay attention to that. Note like how easy service is when a host that's really paying attention to the details gets it right. Note how that expediter gets food out of the kitchen and keeps the kitchen nice and calm, and keeps servers feeling supported and like they have like they're being listened to. Note when you have that person and show them appreciation. Let them know that you're noticing what a good job they're doing, and they will teach you some of their tricks. I guarantee it. Like there are people working with you every single day that are very wise, and just learn from that.
That is really sage advice. Just being open to others. I love that. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Aaron. I want to thank you on behalf of the Served Up family for being on the show today. I think we are just scratching the surface here. And so I want to invite you back. I hope that you will come back. I'm putting you on the spot. So,
yes, I will come back because I think we have a lot, like even just on the USBG, like how we got from 2013 to now is big. And there's a lot there. And the other thing I'll mention is maybe a time that we could talk about this is our 75th anniversary is coming up of the USBG. Next year is 75 years.
Well, let's
so we could talk a little bit about this,
I love
this
it.
modernization.
I would love it. Let's keep everybody on a big cliffhanger. I think that's amazing. Yeah. Absolutely, brother. It's so good. Well, for now, I want to wish you just a whole lot of great health as we move into this next season, and just a lot of peace, Aaron. So thank you so much for being on Served Up. This has really been a treat. Cheers to you.
Thank you, Bridget.
Hey, Served Up friends, Julie here. I am thrilled to tell you about the 15th annual Food Network New York City Wine and Food Festival taking place soon, October 13th through the 16th. For its 15th year, Food Network personalities and more than 400 chefs, mixologists, and wine and spirit producers will come together to create an unforgettable Epicurean experience comprised of tastings, dinners, parties, brunches, lunches, master classes, and more. 100% of the net proceeds from New York City Wine and Food Festival go to God's Love, We Deliver. God's Love, We Deliver is New York City's leading provider of medically tailored meals and nutrition counseling for individuals living with severe illnesses. To date, New York City Wine and Food Festival has raised more than $14 million for its charitable causes. The festival provides a platform for the charity, which has a presence at events through activations and speaking opportunities that help strengthen existing relationships in the food, beverage, and hospitality industry, and also create new ones from on-site interactions. We are so excited to share that the Served Up crew will also be on the ground, bringing you the behind-the-scenes action at the festival. We hope you join us to eat, drink, and feed New York City by purchasing tickets on sale now at www.nycwff.org. And don't forget to follow @Served Up Podcast on all your favorite platforms. And if you're a long-term listener, please leave a review. Cheers. Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of future Served Up episodes. Cheers!